What are some of the worst corporate blunders or PR disasters in history? 4 Seasons Total Landscaping. Next to a crematorium and a sex toy shop. SNL couldn't have written a better setup. Between a cock and a char place. That was the funniest shit ever. Here's one happening right now. HBO is rebranding as Max. HBO is a premium brand with decades of quality programming behind it. Max is generic, vague, and makes me think of softcore porn. Confuses me to think Cinemax. Max is from Cinemax. HBO merged with Cinemax to make Bomax. I get why Comcast rebranded as Xfinity. Everyone hated Comcast. But HBO always seemed to have good brand reputation. As a kid, if your family splurged for HBO, you were one of the cool kids. And so on. Sears dominated the mail order industry for over a century with their catalog. In 1993, they decided that mail order was on the decline and discontinued the catalog. Less than a year later, Jeff Bezos would found Amazon. It's even worse than that. Sears had a stake in an internet access company, Prodigy, and their own credit card, Discover. They had everything they needed to dominate online shopping. It's all that asshole Eddie Lampert's fault. He had the golden opportunity to reinvent Sears as an Amazon competitor, but he's just a stupid greedy fuck who ruined all that potential. And now Amazon is a steaming pile of crap filled with cheap Chinese knockoff brands while the old Sears catalogs still come in handy. Ha! Gerald Ratner calling his own company's jeweler products crap and saying that a prawn sandwich would last longer than their earrings at a conference. The company's value fell by £500 million and he had to resign. Guess self-deprecation isn't always the way to go. Few bits of context. Ratner's chain of shops were aimed at lower-class people, offering affordable jewelry and trinkets. It was the place working-class boys bought rings for working-class girls. The joke was something like, how can we afford to sell a particular trinket for $4.95? Because it's total crap. Everyone knew it wasn't Tiffany's. Nobody was fooling themselves thinking they were getting crown jewels at Ratner's. But to have the owner of the company dismiss his own products as worthless, poorly made tat guaranteed no working-class boy could ever buy anything for his working-class girl from there ever again. It's one of the most impressive modern failures. He imploded his entire business with one joke. Yes. You know those jewelry stores you see in every mall, Zales, K Jewelers, Jared, etc. They are all owned by one group, formerly named the Ratner Group until this inside and now named the Signet Group. If you know jewelry, you know the stuff they are selling is pretty low quality, but they are everywhere and advertise a lot. Back in the 90s, Hormel Foods went on a cease and desist spree against anyone who was making jokes about Spam because they felt the brand had been damaged and needed to be rebuilt. The last straw was when they threatened to sue Jim Henson Studios over the character Spam in Muppet Treasure Island. That turned people against them pretty quick. It turns out if you want to rebuild your brand in the public eye, suing one of the most beloved entertainment franchise of 2 generations was a bad way to go about it. Eventually they dropped all the C&D stuff and changed their marketing strategy, instead deciding to lean into it and proclaiming that there are always going to be jokes about Spam, so they might as well be in on them. They must have hated Monty Python. The judge dismissed their suit on September 22, 1995 after a trial for failure to prove damages, noting, "One might think Hormel would welcome the association with a genuine source of pork." Quality burn. That Pepsi and Kendall Jenner ad. Lol, remind me what this is? It sounds like a memory I don't remember. So bad that the boys parodied it. I think one of the biggest cop-outs by Pepsi was having a generic protest movement that didn't say anything. Like in this protest, no names, no issues, no controversy, just peace and love. DiGiorno trying to make the hashtag why I stayed be about making pizza at home. I wouldn't really call that a disaster. The social media person made a mistake and they admitted it, they apologized, and everyone moved on. Nobody really thought that DiGiorno was trying to hijack the hashtag or anything, and I don't think it damaged the brand at all. Reminds me of the whole Bud Light up for whatever fiasco. Double cheeseburger? I'd hit it. I'm a dollar menu guy. BlackBerry thinking that they are the top in the mobile market, so they didn't need to innovate to compete with those new iPhone things from Apple. And to add to that, the Microsoft crew having a funeral for the iPhone and the BlackBerry outside of their headquarters to celebrate that amazing Windows phone. That phone was fucking dope. Where BB didn't innovate was in their relationship with the carriers. The restrictions placed on the manufacturers limited innovation hugely, and AT&T waived that with Apple. Even after the fact, those rules still existed for all non-Apple devices. One of those rules was that the OS could not be larger than 64 MB, where iOS was several hundred. Another was a limit around data usage, which resulted in RIM developing a global web proxy service which rewrote websites and resized images so that they would appear better on their phones while still adhering to those restrictions. Apple just raw-dogged the internet and nearly took down AT&T in the process. BlackBerry failed themselves with the App Store, and it's reluctant to ditch the Java-based BOS. Switching to Android sooner would have kept them at the top. The QNX-based BB10 OS was probably superior to Android when it was released, but the ship had sailed. Supposedly years ago, there was a Pepsi slogan, "Come alive with Pepsi," that was mistranslated in Chinese as "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead." Or Coca-Cola in Chinese means something like "bite the wax tadpole." Apparently Chinese consumers don't like things that are metal as fuck. They don't, or at least the CCP doesn't. I remember back when WoW launched in China, they had to sanitize all the bones out. Which is great, as this was during Wrath of the Lich King and there are literal giant bone monsters roaming around yelling "Bonestorm." EA Games Star Wars Pride and Accomplishment Reddit post. Truly one the most inept PR posts. Link, for anyone that wants to see the comment in all its glory. You know, sometimes when I'm replying to someone at work who is angry and I'm trying to word a reply that will calm them down, I ask someone to have a look at my reply for an opinion before I hit send. This dude, in the middle of the whole community being pissed off about the monetization and grinding, saw a post about someone complaining that paying $80 for the game doesn't even come with Darth Vader unlocked, and he went, "YOLO, I got this, I have the perfect answer to calm things down." I bet he got walked out at 3 p.m. on Friday of that week. Kodak shunning digital photography. Kodak was basically a chemicals company. Photography was the reason people bought their chemicals. Greater Than Kodak was basically a chemicals company. Sure, but they put the R&D into building the world's first digital camera in 1975. They had the lead in a new kind of market, but at the time didn't think it had any potential. But they're a chemicals company, true. So now, film has resurged in popularity again. My shop brings in 50 rolls in the morning, and it's gone by lunchtime. Good for Kodak. All they have to do is sit back and print money. But no. Now, Kodak decides to drastically reduce all chemical and paper production. https://petapixel.com/2022/03/31/photo labs may soon see Kodak paper and chemical shortages report / This is after 2 years of inflating prices to nearly double. I'm convinced that Kodak hates themselves, and hates people who shoot film, because their decisions work against both. Kodak had some of the earliest commercially available digital cameras. They were a partnership with Nikon. Celebrities singing Imagine at the beginning of the pandemic. "We're all in this together," said by idiot celebrities in their multi-million-dollar mansions. Didn't Ellen DeGeneres say something like she felt like a prisoner, despite living in a massive mansion with a gorgeous wife? Have you heard of the Osborne effect? TLDR. Company in 1981 has one of the first home computers on the market. It sounds fantastic and everything. At the launch, CEO says the next version will be so much better. So everyone decided, why buy this version if the next version will be better? We'll wait for V2. So V1 sold terribly, company folded. There is no V2. Sadly, I had an Osborne and it was great. I live in a high-rise building with views of a lake. We have a huge front lawn that's used as a local park, despite that being incredibly valuable real estate. Back in the 80s, the original concept for my building was a 2-tower structure with a massive complex at the bottom with a full community, grocery store, gym, movie theater, restaurants, dry cleaner, etc. The original plan was they'd build the first tower and use the sales from those units to fund the rest of the construction. Well, they didn't sell any units. Because who would buy in the first tower if you knew your lake view was just going to get blocked in a couple years by an identical building? Why not just wait until sales open on the second one? So we don't have the movie theater or restaurants, and we have to lease out the gym and grocery spaces. In the building lobby, you can actually see where the second building was supposed to connect, and how it's been Frankenstein together to turn what was supposed to be the theater box office is now a receiving area. The intended coat check room is just an alcove where they keep luggage carts for movers, and the commercial loading dock for the intended grocery store is storage for a dry cleaner. Similar to a development by me, they bought a massive waterfront lot that extended way inland. They basically built everything starting as far away from the water as possible. Then after they sold all the water view units, they built the next layer. After the third time of them doing that, the residents started telling people touring the new units what the development company was doing, and the last layer of units still sit mostly empty. No one wants to buy waterfront property just to have their home value tank after 3 years. Target's expansion into Canada. Collapsed in 2 years and cost 7 billion. And, on a related note, Walmart's utter failure in Germany. You know the age-old advice, just be yourself? Walmart really shouldn't have tried that in a country with worker protections. I remember that. It was a beautiful blunder. All that chanting and smiling did not go over well in Germany. But most importantly, they could never compete with chains like Aldi. German retailers are insanely streamlined behemoths. Walmart is just too slow compared to them. I still remember how annoyed my town was when our Zellers, what Canada had before Target, was closed down because Target was rolling into Canada. In the time it took for them to renovate the 2-story mall location and convert it to a Target they pulled out of Canada. So for about a year we lost our only Zellers location and we didn't even get a chance to experience it as a Target because they went tits up before it had a chance to open. Wizards of the Coast and the Open Gaming license earlier this year. Worst handling I've seen. Literally caused dozens if not hundreds of companies to pull away from creating content for the company to making new games that will directly compete with them while alienating their fans at the same time. And then they did the Pinkerton thing recently too. Honestly surprised we don't hear about it more, or them both in tandem. Maybe it means they're dying. Probably just means they're just pumping out more outside MTG sets, LOTR, Doctor Who, and people have moved to that, or just still buying cards and forgetting. Yep. Sending Pinkerton agents because they effed up is just sad. Did it actually hurt them financially though? Last I heard they were doing fine financially. There was a lot of hemming and hawing in hyper online circles, but D&D is still dominant. And new fantasy games don't tend to stand up very well to the D&D brand historically. They're called fantasy heartbreakers for a reason. In the amount of time it takes for those games to get through development and to market, the whole thing will have completely blown over. In Canada, when the Conservative Party merged with the Reform Party, they called themselves the Canadian Reform Alliance Party, or as all Canadian comedians realized, crap. It was hilarious for 48 hours before they changed it. Never forget crap. And in the end, the Progressive Conservatives didn't even join, so this was essentially the Reform Party rebranding themselves by claiming they merged with a party they hadn't even merged with at the time. Nixon's re-election campaign says hold my beer, CRP, but society unofficially changed it to creep. The BP Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion was pretty bad on many levels. One of the largest environmental disasters in history. The Exxon Valdez comes in second. Wasn't this the one with BP's CEO going on camera and saying, "I just want my life back," that made this 1,000 times worse? This was my pick for a disaster. Even South Park got a piece of that action, making fun of how insincere the CEO was about his apology for such a major blunder. Sorry. The Pepsi Number Fever promotion in the Philippines went really terribly. They basically never recovered in the market there. It's really interesting actually. I think we have a winner. To think of all the blunders Pepsi's marketing have done in the past, the Jet, Kendall Jenner, etc., but this makes them look tame by comparison. Many irate 349 bottle cap holders refused to accept Peakby's settlement offer. Not sure why, but this was the funniest fucking sentence in the article. Pepsi Number Fever, also known as the 349 incident, was a promotion held by PepsiCo in the Philippines in 1992, which led to riots and the deaths of at least 5 people. That's the first sentence. Oh my god, I don't know why this is so funny to me, but I'm going to hell. US Army tweets, how has serving impacted you? I actually learned about this one watching it unfold in real time on Reddit. /now I'm scared of fireworks and my wife left me / And my wife left me for my lieutenant's wife's boyfriend. That reminds me of the Navy's Accelerate Your Life ad slogan. Like, was that thought through at all? How about I don't die young? One of the movie directors for the Flash movie basically said this movie will be so amazing you'll forget about all the things Ezra Miller did. It wasn't a director, it was a production designer. I really hope James Gunn just fucking fires Ezra Miller after the Flash releases. It'll happen, but I hope he's open about it. The person really needs to get help, and taking a break from Hollywood will allow that. Ezra is being ejected the day after the movie releases. WB is very specifically doing damage control where they know people will not show up at the box office to watch a movie where they know the main actor has been blacklisted. WB will defend him until the day comes out, and then will immediately we parted ways with him. Xbox One's E3 announcement. It was basically a TV box, hardly any mention of video games, and who could forget the infamous "fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity, it's called Xbox 360. Yeah, and then wanting to force DRM on the physical media to kill the used games market that would have also made it so that borrowing a game from a friend would be a huge pain in the ass. Sony immediately fired back with, "The backlash was so bad MS gave up on the idea, but the whole Xbone E3 announcement was so bad that many people decided right then and there their next consoles was going to be the PS4. Didn't they make the Kinect mandatory too? Then later dialed that back. Yes, and the mandatory Kinect inclusion made it $100 more expensive than the more powerful PS4. Do you guys not have phones? Blizzard. We can't deliver Blizzard on OW2. Also them cancelling of Overwatch 2. When it was announced it was the only thing I knew about this game. They would add a story mode like in Titanfall 2. I am shocked that I scrolled this far down for Blizzard. Heck, I even got an ad for Diablo on this. The Ford Pinto's propensity to explode when rear-ended. And Ford making the business decision not to recall because their cost-benefit analysis showed that lawsuits for injury would be cheaper. Also, thalidomide. They did recall after getting caught lol. It's amazing they thought it was okay for a couple hundred customers to die in a burning wreck and not recall the cars. That kind of action should get people in prison, not only corporate fines. I mean actual 20-year minimum sentence. The reason that thalidomide didn't have a worse impact is because one woman at the FDA named Frances Kelsey fought tooth and nail to prevent the drug from passing certification, as it was missing vital testing and information, specifically, how the drug affected fetuses. Thanks to her, the drug didn't have as much outreach as it could have if someone else carelessly passed it. Her work significantly limited the amount of people injured by the drug. There's a cool TE Dead video about it. /# Seuss anal bum party. Greater than, # Seuss anal bum party. Sorry, what? I'll take le tits now for $800. Suck it, Trebek. Boeing 737 MAX, 2 planes had crashed before they admitted what had happened. Boeing have been doing shady shit for a while. The MAX crashes just brought to light how much of a hot mess management was and probably still is. They cut corners to save costs by not stating that MCAS was installed and thus avoiding recertification because it flew like an 737-ing. I knew someone that worked for Boeing at the time that this happened, and he said that the tension in the company after the second plane had crashed was like nothing he had ever seen before. Many years later, he told me that there was this whole atmosphere of we knew exactly what happened and we were just waiting for the consequences. He had a planned career move just after it happened, but he said his last 2 weeks working at Boeing were the most stressful time he's ever had at work. Currently on r/games. Don Matrick and his disastrous Xbox One reveal event in 2013. A tone-deaf presentation almost devoid of actual games in favor of TV, sports, TV. Capped with always online requirement, restricted game sharing, and Matrick himself saying if you want an offline console, get an Xbox 360. Sony capitalized hard on this PR disaster, receiving standing ovations for announcing very basic console functionalities one would expect. No online check-in, buy and share/sell physical game copies, etc., in addition to a short cheeky game sharing commercial. Plus the PS4 launched at $100 less than the X1. The Xbox brand was ruined and is still recovering today. The how to share PlayStation games videos with 2 guys just handing over a disc made me laugh. That was the pettiest, most passive-aggressive response possible to Microsoft's Xbox One game sharing blunder. It was also pure marketing genius. Microsoft's fuck-up was so bad that Sony straight up skated on starting to charge for online. Even after PSN had gone down for like 6 months and tanked a couple dozen games because their infrastructure was a dead hamster in a burning closet. Blockbuster refusing to buy Netflix. At the time, Netflix was just a DVD company, and Blockbuster had already attempted a streaming service with Enron. Streaming was just not ready at this point in time, so the question really was, how much would a DVD by mail really hurt the largest video store chain in the country? I think people here are looking back at it with 2020 vision of what Netflix was going to do, not what they were doing. Sometimes the correct move at the time is not the correct move overall. Nah. They would have just killed it and it would have been nothing more than a fad. Surprised no one has mentioned the Bhopal disaster. This is very fucking sad, but I literally didn't know this happened until I searched for that term because of your comment. Just now. I am in my late 20s and I had no idea this happened. Now look up the Love Canal disaster. TLDR, an entire neighborhood was built over a toxic waste site. Didn't expect to read my city's name randomly on Reddit. P.S. A very high percentage of COVID deaths in Bhopal were the victims of the gas tragedy incident or their relatives, because the exposure to the gas had caused so many genetic and medical complications that their bodies just couldn't handle the COVID infection at all.